Welcome to our fourth installment of the One Source Women Crush Wednesday series. I am Tiffany Presney, founder of One Source Management Consulting, and we are the home of Peaceful Project Management. Today, I get to talk with one of my favorite people, Miss Brenda Shlian, owner of Sock It To You, which is a clothing retailer that specializes in socks. Brenda has been a business owner for 25 years, and she has launched at least 4 successful businesses with locations across Maryland, Delaware, and Pennsylvania. Brenda's been married for 53 years, 5-3, a mother of 2, and is a grandmother of 4. And I must say, every time I speak with Brenda, she tells me about a new business venture that she's ready to start. I'm very excited to say hello and welcome Brenda. Hey, Brenda.
Hello. Good morning.
Good morning. So I just want to jump right into the question. So my favorite first question to ask folks is really how did you get here? What was your path to business ownership like?
It was a challenge, but it was an exciting challenge. It was sometimes dreams of what I would like to do, but I would have to follow through with them by building on the ideas. And it was a partnership with my husband because we both decided that this was what we really wanted to do. Even though I had a past history of teaching, I also was in the teaching profession for Baltimore County schools for 29 years, and then I taught at Towson University for 19 years. So this was an ongoing desire for us to have these types of businesses, some type of business where we're interacting with people. And it was exciting to research it. Mm-hmm. You know, we'd come up with an idea. Not all ideas became realities, but building up to those was the exciting thing. So we would start off by coming up with an idea. And it might have been built on something that we had previous to that. For example, we started off with hotel gift shops. And inside the hotel gift shop, one of our items was a sock. Don't bother me, I'm crabby. And I would wear those socks all the time, be real excited about wearing them. And I'd say to my husband, whose name is Barry, I'd say, we need to do something more with these socks. So from that's what started us. With that one pair of socks, what are we going to do with it? So we wanted to start off small because you never know when you're starting something, if you invest heavily, it might not be successful. So it's always better to start off as a small person. And that's exactly what we did. So that's why we ended up in malls and kiosks, you know, setting up those. And that was really a challenge because socks back then, 25 years ago, or whenever we started, if I would go to a manager and I'd say, I'd like to open up a sock cart, they look at me and go, socks? No one's going to buy socks. Because most of the time you go and buy socks in packages. You'd be 3 in a package or something like that. But we wanted to specialize. So our very first place was in Annapolis Mall. We started a cart with socks, and it was during the summer. Mm-hmm. And everybody said, you're not going to be able to do that. No one's going to buy socks in the summer. Mm-hmm. But everybody needs socks. So we did really well, but we started off small. We weren't sure exactly what we were putting on there. So we actually researched different types of socks. We went through store. Can I interrupt? Am I a problem if I interrupt this? If I talk too long, tell me.
No.
Okay. We would go from store to store. We'd walk the malls, many miles of malls, many different types of malls, and we would see what are people offering on these carts. We actually literally would see. And we both looked at each other and said, no one has socks. No one's specializing or picking special socks that make people happy. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So we got in Annapolis during the summer. we did fairly well. We'd have socks of, I would call them my personality socks. It would be funny socks that had sayings on them.
Mm-hmm.
Then we investigated more into it and we thought, why not do sports teams? Because everybody is very sports happy. That's a real important thing in people's lives and entertainment throughout, the different months. So we started off with the 32 NFL teams.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it took us a while before we actually got into that. And I'm going to tell you how it ended up happening. We did the Annapolis Mall one summer.
Mm-hmm.
We tried to get in there that Christmas. They didn't want us. That was the year that New Orleans had a hurricane. Remember the flooding in New Orleans?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I called up Columbia Mall, and I had previously called Columbia Mall, and they denied me having a sock card the year before. Turned out when I called Columbia Mall that day, the person in New Orleans was displaced from there and was in Baltimore. And when I told her I wanted to do a sock card, she says, well, would you be willing to do a card on the second level of Columbia Mall? I said, yeah, sure. So it was a cart that they brought from Harbor Place, put it in Columbia Mall. We did it on the second floor. Columbia Mall was thrilled with us. It was when the economy was really good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because they actually asked us to come back the following year.
Nice.
So we were on the lower level.
Mm-hmm.
And I always would advertise my socks as it's like a candy store. You come up to the cart,
mm-hmm.
You can pick, there are so many assortments.
Mm-hmm.
You don't gain weight, and there's always someone that needs a pair of socks. So if you pick a pair of socks for a person that doesn't like them, someone in that house is going to wear those socks regardless.
This is true.
So, and it doesn't expire. Candy expires. My socks never expire unless you wear them too long and then they get a hole in there on the toes. I mean, we loved it. We actually loved it. When I was in Columbia, what made me feel really, really good, because I think I did Columbia for like 4 or 5 years. I was right opposite, if you're familiar with Columbia Mall, I was right opposite Rock and Fuss Candy. So every year when Thanksgiving would come, that's when we would set up Thanksgiving. We only did 2 months. I actually had customers come up to me and say, I didn't know it was Christmas until I saw your card, which really made me feel good. And I really had a lot of repeat business, which made me, the people, it's not only selling the product, it's the people you meet.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's a whole world of all kinds of people, and you can learn so much from them. It really became a personality thing, and meeting people and talking to people and seeing what they like. And my interest in sports, to be honest with you, I never liked football. But once I started having the football teams, I started loving it, because when people would come up and talk about teams, I was able to communicate with them and have conversations with them. So
okay.
that's how I really got started with it. I mean, and then we went from, and what was really interesting, because several years later, the manager at Columbia Mall, who told me he didn't think a sock cart would work, he was transferred over to Annapolis Mall, and he actually wanted me to come there. He says, oh, I really would like for you to consider. And this was several years later. Mm-hmm. And we also were in Harbor Place. I think I forgot to mention that to you too. We were in Harbor Place in Baltimore City. So we were already down there. So I said to the gentleman, I figured he didn't want me then. And he really wanted a sock card, but we were down at Harbor Place at that time.
So what
I could go on and on talking about it's a business that we love. We really, it's part of us.
Well, what sounds cool to me is that you started with like an aha moment, really.
Mm-hmm.
So you're in the gift shop, you're wearing a sock that you like, that, you're saying, okay, I want to do something with this. But then you take that aha moment and you have to marry it to what I'm hearing is months and miles worth of research, of market research, of knowing where your business can fit into the market. Because one of the things I definitely wanted to ask you about, because I've always been, impressed with your ability to take a business and scale it. And I wanted to ask you about advice to retail business owners who are looking to scale their businesses. And what I'm hearing so far is, a lot of research, a lot of what is it?
Yes.
What is it? Footwork. You have to, walking miles
Footwork
along
with the
and
socks.
yeah, footwork for these socks. But yeah, I would love to hear more about that. If you have any advice for retailers who are looking to grow their business, maybe get into more than one location.
But you definitely have to go out in the world, all different places, because whenever you set up a business, you never know who's going to come across your business. So we visited many, many malls, even malls outside of Maryland and outside of Delaware. Even when we would go on trips, the first place I could go into, we looked for socks to see if they had socks and what people were doing. You can't just open up a business after a month and say, oh, I can do this. I can get in touch with these people, and that's going to set it. It is a lot of ideas and putting it together. And even when you have the ideas, once you get a location, you have to decide how you're going to display these items and how you're going to make it easy for people to come in and actually want them.
Mm-hmm.
But it is a lot of work. It was a lot of it before we actually, because it was when the sock, it was called Don't Bother Me, I'm Crabby. And we had that sock custom made for the gift shop because Maryland was crabs. This sock was so comfortable. I'd always say to Barry, they energized my feet. They're the most comfortable socks. I kept them in my car. When we'd go on a trip, I would put them on, sit at the passenger seat and had those on. So you have to decide what you're going to put on. It took us months because I was really leery of doing it in the summer. That really scared me.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes when you have an idea, you have to take a jump and take a chance. And that's why, because first, number one, you figure on your finances because that's really important. So summertime, it's cheaper to rent a car than it is at Christmas time.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the reasons why we did it. We also decided the type of cart that they had was easy for display for the product that we wanted, because socks you hang up. So it's just a matter of the grid that we were able to put on the cart. And I would say it almost took us close to 6 months, 8 months before we actually did Annapolis Mall, because we would go there on a weekly basis on different days. Because you also had, how they count people coming in and out of stores.
So you can see the flow.
Some stores are closed on Monday because mm-hmm. it's a slow day. Mm-hmm. Or whether they have a special or whatever. So we really clocked it out. We would go to malls and see what was going on and see which mall would. Believe me, we turned down thoughts of certain malls that we thought, no, this is never going to make it here. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting because you have ideas, but you just can't jump in them. You have dreams. And they had their ups and downs. They really had their ups mm-hmm. and downs. It was scary to go in the first time, but it was a small investment as far as that. But once we started getting bigger, it obviously becomes more and more of an investment. But socks will never go out of style. People need them all the time. And that's the one thing that, was good for me to say, hey, this is a good business. And I wear socks all the time, obviously. Mm-hmm. And I'm known as the sock lady around where I live because I'll have a pair of funny looking socks on my feet. But it's a nice, clean business. It's really, it puts smiles on. I had a pediatrician come to my cart when I was in Columbia. Mm-hmm. And he was buying all these socks. He bought like 4 or 5 pairs of socks. And he says to me, you know why I buy these socks? He says, because when I work, I wear 2 different socks. There is a sock company called Mismatch Socks, but he would buy 2, the regular pairs of socks, personality socks, He says, I wear 2 different socks every day. I said, well, why do you do that? He says, because when I have a child that comes in and starts crying, I show them my feet. And then they get happy because they'll look at the socks. I mean, like the socks I have on today have bananas, but there might be a sock that has giraffes on it. So he would wear 2 different socks. So when he told me that, I started wearing 2 different pairs of socks each day that I worked. And I would say to people, look at my socks.
And you wouldn't have gotten there if you hadn't taken a risk.
You're right.
What I'm hearing from you is that you do a lot of homework, but then at a certain point, you just got to jump.
Yeah, absolutely. At a certain point, you have to say to yourself, am I going to do this or am I not? Do I have the finances to do it or do I not? Mm-hmm. So you have to decide sometimes which chance you want to take. If you do a small investment and you're willing to say, oh, I might lose that, then it's worth a try. If you're going to do the small investment and say it's going to put me in a bind, then you shouldn't do it. Mm-hmm. Because you got to either go wholeheartedly to promote the business.
I like that. That's good advice. So let me get into my next question. I like to ask all of the business owners about what challenges that you faced as a business owner. But what I really like to know about is what challenge surprised you? What was the unexpected challenge that you bumped into?
The unexpected, well, there's a lot of challenges having to deal with the people that you have to make arrangements to rent the place or to lease a place. Those challenges are very hard. The one challenge that really surprised me was when that one manager or the leasing manager called me and he said, I really want you in to do a card, when he didn't like the idea to begin with. So it made me feel good that he said that. My other challenge is sometimes when we first started off in business, and this one's really interesting, we had one sock company that reached out to me and said, would you like to put socks? When we first started, okay? And we were trying to be conservative, not go hogwash and all different things. So we decided not to do that particular sock. So a couple of years later, we heard about those socks again. And we wanted to try those socks. I reached out to the representative and his answer was, I called you once before and you didn't want to buy my socks. I said, well, at that time, I really wasn't in the position to buy because we were just starting. I said, if you would be interested, I would, like to order some socks. Let me see. I'll get back to you. Never got back to me. So he was a salesperson. So I called up the company owner. He wouldn't sell me socks either. So I thought to myself, I said, I have a sock store. And at this time we were really large in the airport. I thought, I am willing to buy your product to sell and get your name out there. And you're telling me you don't want to sell it now after I said to you I was just starting. You should have respected the fact that I was just starting and now I'm successful and I can be good for his product. So we never ordered his socks.
Really? So to this day?
Yeah, to this day.
Let me find out you have a sock nemesis out here, Brenda.
I thought to myself, it's like I always say to myself, you wear a T-shirt that says a name store or name team, they should be paying you because you're advertising for them. I was willing to put a whole section of his socks in, and they were not sports team, they were sports related. They might have had sports, a whole section there. So no, I said, okay. It did, and it still doesn't bother me to this day because we do have a large selection of different types of socks.
Yes. So really, even though you weren't able to make it work with him, he was not the end all be all of anything.
Oh, no, not at all. Trust me. His socks are out there. I see him every once in a while. I don't see him in a whole lot of places. And it's interesting because we'll walk in the store and go, oh, there's his socks. And you see it, you can tell whether something's selling or not selling You know what I mean? If it's so stocked up, nothing's moving, or if it's, whatever, or if it's half empty, that means they're trying to get rid of them. So we know the ins and outs or whatever. And our socks, the other thing that we really pride ourselves on is quality. We try to get socks and deal with companies that we actually really tried to first deal with socks that were made in the United States. But unfortunately, a lot of companies have turned elsewhere. They make their socks someplace else. So it's really out of our control. But some of our socks are made in the United States. And we go to the gift shows. That's another thing. If you're thinking of doing, you should go to these types of shows that are offered to you to get ideas. Because we had a friend that wanted to do a cart in Columbia Mall too. We had no idea what he wanted. I said, you should go to the gift show and see what kind of ideas there are out there. And that's a great source to do too.
So it's called the gift show? Is it like an exposition?
Yeah, well, there's all different kinds of gift shows. If you go online, these are like, it's the New York gift show at the Javits Center. There's an Atlanta gift show. All places have, that focus on retail sales, different items and things like that.
Okay, that's very cool. So basically getting into your industry and learning what the trade organizations and getting into the trade shows various, right?
Yeah.
That's very good advice. Thank you very much. So I will ask you as my final question, the question that I always ask my guests, and that is, how do you find peace while you juggle being a business owner with all of the other responsibilities that you have?
Well, one thing is support from my husband, because we are partners. I'm the majority owner of the business. But, we sort of discuss things. But I have to tell you, you have made peace to me. Because there were days, and I am not kidding you, I am like, and I might have a conference with you there after a couple hours later or whatever. And honestly, at the end of my conference with you, I am at peace because you were so organized. And that's what, I'm organized, but I've learned how you have to sit back and say, it gets done, because Tiffany always says it gets done. And it does get done. But in my mind, some things don't get done. I think you have taught me that things, when they're organized and you've done all you can do, there's nothing else you can do, you have to sit back and wait. And you've helped me to be patient and wait. I'm a very impatient person because I like things immediate. But by having you reply with a list of things that need to be accomplished, that's how I get peace, because I know that list will be accomplished by you.
I love a list. I love a checklist.
Yeah. No, I think
I love a checklist. Just be like, ding, it's done.
Yeah, I like to be able to check it off. And I really do more. Since I've met you, I've done more checklists to organize my thoughts, really. And I appreciate that. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. You are welcome. Trust me, I was not always like this. And I think that between my job at the time, my kids, all the responsibilities and stuff, I really got to a point where I felt like things were just flying around my head like bats, like they were just responsibilities. And I didn't know if I was going to be able to get them all done. So this is how I make sure that I get things done. And it helps me a lot with my anxiety about whether or not I'm going to get something done. So that helps me. So if it helps somebody else, definitely I'd pass that right on along.
That's what a good role model does. And that's what I appreciate. Because when you give me an assignment, and I like your assignments, because that's what makes peace in my mind. Because you have said, this needs to be done. Get it back to me as soon as you can. You don't usually give a timeline on it, but you give me time enough to return it back to you. So that's what I need, and that's what I appreciate from you.
Well, Brenda, I don't give you due dates because I know you're going to do it like that day or the next day at the latest.
Because I'm I'm an immediate person, but without that list, I would never do it.
Mm-hmm.
I would never do it. As soon as I get off the phone with you, I usually try to do things right away, but not everybody's like that. But if everybody has the list like what you've supplied for me, that's what makes peace in a person's mind, because they know what direction to go. It's just like my business. When I first started off, we didn't know how to go into that card until I had all those pieces in line.
Mm-hmm,
so that was my checklist. First, come up with the idea. Started with my socks. Second, where are you going to see these socks? So that was second. That's the second thing on my list that we did. We kept on doing it. So in essence, I did that part. But with business-wise, when it gets down to the nitty-gritty, you have helped me to get my ideas down.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I have to mention really quickly, Brenda was my very first client for Maryland Small Business Certification Services. And really, I appreciate you being a bit of my prototype. A lot of the process that I have now, I documented from working with you. So you helped me as well.
Well, that's a partnership. That's a partnership. And that's what's so important. And when you can talk to someone and feel comfortable enough, that's a plus. Because no matter what I asked you, you do it with a smile on your face. You know, sometimes you could be afraid to talk to someone. You could be afraid to say, their ideas. I don't feel that way with you. I feel really relaxed with you. I really do, Tiffany.
Oh, thank you. I will say, I think we're all in a people business, no matter what it is that we do. Like, I provide services, you are in retail, but I remember when you just said that with retail, you have to be able to connect with your customers, even going so far as to say, let me learn more about things that interest them. So when they come in to talk about their sports teams, I can talk about their sports teams. Like, that is connecting with people. And for me, because I am a people person, I do services and I love to connect with my clients. Of course,
you must have a ton of friends with all your clients, because I'm sure you talk with them. We have a conversation even before we start about the things we need to be really focusing on, but we still complete it all. Because at the end, it's still there. So you've made it so relaxing that it's like we're having a cup of coffee together. It's like sitting down and having a cup of coffee, and these are the problems that I have and that you're helping me solve. That's what it is. It's my coffee time with you, or tea time, or whatever time it is.
Because getting stuff done does not have to hurt.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't have to hurt. It doesn't have to be dry and painful and boring. You can actually have fun while you're getting stuff done. What was that they used to say with the 7 doors? You whistle while you work, or something like that. Like, have fun while we're getting this thing done.
Well, and it's true, because we've had every conversation we've interjected something else. It's always not just business. No. It's interjecting something else, which makes it a pleasure and makes it easy.
Oh, thank you so much, Brenda. You're going to make me blush.
No, it's true, though.
Oh, I appreciate it. Well, I'm getting ready to wrap this thing on up, and I want to say thank you so much for...
You're quite welcome.
Coming and being a guest, and for talking about your experience. You are really a powerhouse in this region when it comes to business ownership, because it takes a lot to be as successful as you have been for as long as you have been.
Yeah, and I'm proud of my business. It has its ups and downs. That's like anything else, but you got to feel good about it. Otherwise, you shouldn't be there.
Exactly. Oh, and I almost forgot to ask you one question. I asked you, and I'm really just going to ask you a question I asked you before. I said, hey, Brenda, do you plan on retiring? And what did you say, Brenda?
No.
Never.
I will never retire. It's kind of interesting. Barry will never retire. And I always say you should retire. But in reality, I'll never retire, because we love the business we've created. I always say to Barry, I got news for you. We're the one that put the sock business on the map, because we were really the very, very first people or person or group to do those kinds of socks on a cart. And I really believe that because when we were in Colombia, I had many people stand behind me and watch what I was doing and try to replicate it. And people have. Mm-hmm. People have. So, I feel proud. I gave them a source to find something else. There's always room for everybody to fit.
Nice. Well, thank you. Well, thank you so much for being on my show.